Breastfeeding, the first step to lifelong health. It's also helped me to regain my figure.
Want to promote your latest products on television? ATV's 2015 Ad Easy Super Package is the right choice for you. Our price starts and our promotion coverage reaches as far as the Pearl River Delta region and southern China. Call us now for more details.
Welcome back to Newsline. We are talking to Justice Secretary Rimsky-Yun. We were just talking about the Occupy protests and the rule of law and people breaking the law in the name of democracy. Right now there's a bit of a crackdown going on those who were very prominent in last year's Occupy protests. There's been a lot of talk about political persecution. Are you being fair with the way you're going about dealing with the people who took part in those protests?
I would say absolutely. So I don't think I would agree if there is any political prosecution, still less political persecution. That would not be possible. In our system, we have very stringent conditions to satisfy before prosecution would be launched. We have to look at the evidence, we have to look at the public interest. And in fact, if the case is not up to the level which would meet the legal requirement, I think the court would simply throw out the case. It's easy for people to say, having committed a criminal offense, that there are political prosecution. But I think one look at the situation, look at how the court deal with those cases. If the court thinks that there is no elements of crime and they are not satisfied that the evidence can prove the case beyond reasonable doubt, I think the court will say something. So far we haven't seen anything of that sort.
As far as prosecution is concerned, what you have is you have these lines of the Occupy protest leaders going to the police station, and they're actually mockingly calling it arrest by appointment. They answer the phone, they go to the police station. The police have no charges against them. They've only informed them of what they're possibly facing. And then these guys refuse to be bound by bail, and they have to be released unconditionally. You're facing another possible outbreak of street protests when your package of political reform proposals go to LegCo. The way you're dealing with them right now, there is no fear. Aren't you worried that they're going to come back in even bigger force?
I think one has to be fair to the way the police handle the situation. The police is acting in accordance with the legal power that they have under the police force ordinance, and the so-called appointment system is being perhaps twisted by certain people. In substance, what the police is doing is the process of investigation. In fact, that happens in other criminal activities as well. What I mean is that applies to the investigations of other criminal activities as well. So there's nothing, as some people suggest, that the police are putting up a show. That's not fair. Rather, the police need to finish the investigation so that they can pass the file to our Department of Justice, and then we can look at the file and decide whether there is sufficient evidence.
Will you be tough on them if you have another round of street blockades?
There is no questions of tough or not tough. I think we do what is right in the circumstances.
All right. All this talk of lawlessness has also brought about a renewed debate on national security legislation, which is a really controversial issue. You've seen a previous government almost collapse because of this issue. Do you think it's time now to talk about this issue right now?
I think at the moment, to be very honest, I think our plate is very full. As you quite rightly point out at the commencement of this program, our top priority now is the constitutional development. And on top of that, of course, we will not and we cannot ignore other issues concerning people's livelihood. We are also facing a problem of land shortage, housing shortage. So those things would have to be properly dealt with as well on top of constitutional development. So as we have repeatedly said on a few occasions, for the time being, we do not have any plan or timetable for enacting the law under Article 23 of the Basic Law.
Realistically, as the Justice Minister, you would have a good idea of this. If we were to talk about national security legislation, are we talking about leaving it alone for a few years, a few months? What kind of time frame are we looking at when you eventually get down to looking at this, considering that it's such an important issue right now, or at least it's been brought up as an important issue? You have delegates to the local, to the national parliament, talking about applying the mainland's national security laws directly, not even Article 23 of the Basic Law. So, realistically,
speaking for myself, I don't think using the channel of Article 18, i.e. to bring national law into Hong Kong is a very good idea. I think the law, as stated in Article 23, is very clear. Hong Kong SAR should on its own enact the law as specified in Article 23. And certainly that is the legislative intention behind Article 23, and therefore Hong Kong should look at the situation in Hong Kong and then decide A, when to enact the law, and B, what would be the appropriate contents of the law. For the time being, I think it may not be the best time to move forward to enact Article 23, although I would stress that it is something which Hong Kong has a constitutional responsibility to do so. It's just a question of when we can have the appropriate political environment and the resources to handle the situation. I would have thought if one asks the general public in Hong Kong whether we would like to deal with the constitutional development issue first or whether to tackle Article 23, I dare say majority of Hong Kong people would say deal with the constitutional development first.
Yeah, you've seen that from history as well, that Hong Kong people are a bit nervous about this kind of talk. Not this year, you think? Maybe within this year it's something that you will be talking about?
I think for 2015, the plan definitely is to tackle the issues arising from constitutional development. And hopefully, if we can get sufficient support in LegCo before summer, then the next step would be the local legislation to implement the details of the method for selecting the chief executive by universal suffrage, which means, in fact, there will be far more work to do because the drafting of the local legislation would have to deal with a lot of technical details, and my department would be heavily involved.
If it doesn't go through, will you resign as one of the government ministers who was in charge of pushing this and making it work?
I think it's too early to think about that because one asked the question, why would the failure of getting the package passed would cause whichever official to resign? Is it something that would be in the best interest of Hong Kong, or would it help the future constitutional development to move ahead, or would it cause even more uncertainty? So I don't think it's a very a real question at this stage.
All right, let's go to something important, which I know you're going to try to be very diplomatic about it, and you're going to say that you don't comment on individual cases. But there's a lot of concern right now in Hong Kong about justice system and justice for one class of people, a different kind of justice for another class of people. Now, I know that the Sun Hung Gai trial and the Rafael Hui case have kind of restored confidence in the judiciary as well as the ICAC that this government is willing to go after rich and powerful people who break the law. We're not seeing that with the delay with Donald Tsang's case, former Chief Executive Donald Tsang. What's happening there? Why is it taking so long?
First of all, you are perfectly right that I cannot comment on individual cases, but I wouldn't say there is any delay as such in the case that you just mentioned.
It's been 3 years.
I think one cannot simply look at the time. As I was saying the other day, if you look at the example of the Rafael Hui cases, the complexity of the issues involved, the documents involved, the volume of the evidence involved would demand a very long process, a very careful consideration. In fact, as revealed in the public domain, the very minute examinations of each and every pieces of paper, including, say, pages in the diary, which was revealed in the Rafael Hui cases, those are not easy stuff. And as I said on another occasion, I rather we have a quality investigation and which enable us to come to the correct decisions.
Well, something as complicated as the Sanongwei case. You've finished it. You acted within time. You've taken the prosecution action. The court has made its judgment. It's over. Donald Tsang's case seems to be much simpler than that.
I don't think I can say yes or no to that. But as I was saying the other day, you cannot simply judge the complexity of the case by reading what you can see from the public media. In fact, it would not be fair to the colleagues of the ICAC. You do not know the tasks that they face and the challenges that they have to tackle. So it would not be fair to jump to the conclusion of whether there is or there is no delay by simply.
Well, you won't even tell us when you receive the ICAC report for the public to make an informed judgment whether you've been sitting on it or you are justified in taking so long. When did you receive the report from the ICAC, the completed report?
I don't think I should disclose those kinds of details. And in fact, it would be an oversimplified question in saying, when did you receive a report? It doesn't work that way. So that's perhaps one of the reasons why people who are not familiar with the investigation process may ask the question, which I understand. I mean, I can understand people who are not involved would say, well, how come it takes, say, 1 year, 2 years, 3 years? But if you are involved in the process and if you are tasked to go through all those documents, perhaps you will say, can I have more time?
All right, let's leave it at that. That's all we have time for. Thanks very much for joining us here.
Thank you very much.
And thank you for watching Newsline. I'll see you again next week.
Coming up, Travel Checkpoint, Heavenly Haven.